There is a lake without a floor, deep enough to sink all concepts of reality. Darkness, time, and monsters merge. Those who find themselves on the way down will discover how much pressure the human soul can take. When they wash up on shore, in their hands, they hold a pearl of insight. Now, will you swim in Umbra Lake?
Silent JYLL by Daniel Bryan Mobley. Read by Art Brown. Dedicated to Avita Hall. Total solar eclipse. What a sight it was. You ever seen one? I just did. At the ripe old age of 52, I saw it. Rad and I sat right here on the backyard patio and watched God's handiwork in action. Old NR is my dog, a salt and pepper beagle and my only friend on earth. The lights went down and the crickets woke up. We watched together, and it was perfect, you know. Well, almost at least. For it to have been rightly perfect, she would have had to be here. I dream of her every so often. Pops up between the pillows on those rare summer nights where REM sleep is possible, when the arthritis and the acid reflux take a vacation. Where do they travel to? Only the good Lord knows. She comes to my room and lies next to me. Her forehead on mine, we share secret things. I talk about the life I've lived since she's been gone, and she does what she does best. She listens, understands, and tells me what I need to hear without saying a word. Lord, I miss her. I miss JYLL. There have been many eclipses since that day God saw fit to let our paths converge. But it was only on this hot August day in the year 2017 that I found the courage to buy some of those goofy glasses and look at one head on. Yes, I was afraid to accept the truth. Truth, that she's gone. She ain't ever coming back. Just as the good book says about sin, people too have their seasons. Time to come into your life. Time to leave it. And after all this time, I've got to admit, our season has long been done and over with. But what's a harm in remembering? After all, how many folks can legitimately say they helped an alien girl and an angel save the world? I met JYLL in the year of our Lord, 1983. It was June 11th, a Saturday. I had just turned 18 years old. A miserable young man that believed the world owed him something. It didn't, of course, but you couldn't tell him that. Headlines like the Wah-Mee Massacre and U.S. Embassy bombing haunted his dreams. The great John Lennon had been dead for over 2 years, murdered by some deranged zealot superfan, and I had been stuck washing dishes at the local Quincy's for $3.35 an hour. I was still living at home with my ma at the time and had little aspirations past the high school diploma that was like pulling teeth to get. Well, maybe one aspiration: write funny books. But I wasn't very good, and to be honest, I wasn't planning on sticking around to improve. In my heart, I felt like an old man, ready to call it quits. Late morning, after a shower, I spent the next hour writing a goodbye letter to my dear old mama, trying to explain my reasons for wanting to clock out early. This, too, much like getting that diploma, was like pulling teeth. Trying to find the words to tell a mother why her only child is better off dead is a high mountain to climb. I did my best. Shortly afterward, I put on some jeans and a green polo. I put the letter in an envelope and left it on the kitchen table. Mama always slept in on weekends, the result of weekly double shifts at the hospital, and prepared to head out. Determined not to wake her, I discreetly made myself some toast and scrambled eggs. I stood at the kitchen counter and ate them. Couldn't risk her waking up and finding my letter beforehand. After downing a glass of OJ, I quietly left the house. I had not arrived at my decision easily. That dishwashing job got canned midweek by my boss, Gary Swift, no relation to that Taylor kid. He was a couple years older than me. A college-bound weasel type that was equal parts obsessive-compulsive disorder and yes-man. Substandard job performance, the reason for my discharge. I washed dishes too slow or cleaned them too fast or whatever bullcrap the machine comes up with to get you out the door. I'd be lying if I said I was upset. Reason 1001 to end it all. Straw that broke the camel's back was Angie Scopazzi breaking up with me. Angie was an Irish-Italian girl I had started dating senior year. She was a curly brunette with beautiful hazel eyes and a true mad-on for the Silver Surfer, my favorite comic book hero. Heck, she was the only girl I'd ever known that even knew who the Surfer was, or the Fantastic Four, for that matter. Things had started out good, but over time, her passion for comics, and by proxy me, fizzled out. It didn't help that her folks, both members of the upper middle class, were always in her ear about how I didn't measure up. Couldn't disagree, but I wanted to give it one more chance before I gave up the ghost. Got into my car, a 1976 Cadillac Seville, green. It was a birthday present from my absentee father. He and Mama had divorced maybe a year or so after I'd been born, somewhere around 66. Barely knew him, but he was always good about sending money at the expected times in my life, sometimes a little too good. He lived in Detroit, made a darn good living as a car salesman for Motor City Motors. Never asked him for anything, but he always gave me everything except what I needed most, his time. As I backed out of our driveway for what I believed would be the last time, I tuned the radio to WHBT-FM. Country music, my fave station of choice. I caught the tail end of Charlie McClain's That's What You Do to Me before a warehouse groceries ad chimed in with a special sales promo. Golden ripe bananas on sale, 19 cents a pound. Gold medal flour, 78 cents for a 5-pound bag. After that, Fred Flintstone and his pet pal Dino raised a compelling plea for donations, courtesy of Shriners Hospital for Children. And then DJ Bob Fortune was back in the saddle, talking about the upcoming Saturday night performance at the Grand Ole Opry of one Nancy Jean McKee. Nancy was a local singer out of Memphis, Tennessee, just like Miss McClain. Good Christian girl, could even play some mean guitar to boot. Was a heartbreaker, too. Raven-haired angel. Patsy Cline reincarnated with a Karen Carpenter voice. God rest both their souls. Pure magic. 20 years old and came out of nowhere, rocketed to the top of the local country music scene in '81. Her first hit record spoke to me. Song was called Praying for Heaven. Met her once, signed the cover slip for me. It didn't take long to reach Angie's house. We found out early in our courtship that we didn't live far from each other. She and her family lived in a nice yellow house with an umber roof. I pulled into her driveway slowly, making sure not to scratch her daddy's brand-new cutlass. As I crossed the yard for the front door, I noticed the yard was freshly cut. Pretty sure it was the work of that kid from 2 houses down, Freddie Noble. He had saved up a bunch of cash from his part-time job at the Golden Arches and bought himself a push mower in the spring. Ambitious kid, that one. Angie's daddy, Frank Scopassi, answered the door. Just my luck. "Can I help you, Eric?" he asked. "I was wondering if I could speak to Angie, Mr. Scopassi," I asked back. "Think you already know the answer to that, son." "Would only be a minute." Mr. Scopassi lifted his eyeglasses, pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. "Listen, son, I'm trying to be as nice as I can. She doesn't want to talk to you. Whatever it is you thought you two had is kaput. Got it?" I shoved my hands into my jean pockets. "Yes, sir. Could you maybe just give her a message for me, then?" He made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a groan. "What's that?" he finally asked. "Could you tell her that Norin Rad is going back to Zen-La, and he needs Shelabal to take care of his chronicles?" "What the hell is a Norin Rad?" Mr. Scopassi yelled. I looked over at the window and saw Angie peeping at me from behind the curtains. I walked back to my car, ignoring the rest of Mr. Scopassi's rant. He had slammed the front door before I could stick the key in the ignition. If he chose to pass along any message at all to his daughter, I figured there was a small chance she'd understand. As trivial as it was, I felt I couldn't go to the great beyond in peace until I knew my comic book collection was in respectful hands. I got back out of the car, crossed the front yard again. I crept up to the window, looked in. Sure enough, Daddy was giving her the riot act in the kitchen. Her mother, a mousy type, sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee, letting her husband do his thing. Angie said something he didn't like and was promptly sent to her room. This was my chance. Sneaking around to the back side of the house, I climbed the chain-link fence and landed in the backyard. The window to Angie's room was on the rear part of their home. I waited a good 30 seconds before placing 3 quick but firm knocks on her window. She drew the curtains back and opened the window. It wasn't our first time meeting this way. Still in her pink pajama two-piece, bedhead and all, Angie was as beautiful as ever. She liked to sleep in, too, just like Mama. She looked at me in pity, reminding me that she was no longer the Shalabal to my Norin Rad, the heart that drove my Silver Surfer. "Eric, you can't be here," she whispered. I know, Ange," I agreed, barely able to look her in the eyes. "I just wanted to know if you got my message." Angie chewed on her lower lip, her eyes darting about. "Something about the surfer going back to Zen-Sha, right?" "Zen-La," I corrected. Angie was already forgetting the lore that bonded us only a year ago. It had only been 2 months since graduation. "Okay, Zen-La," she recanted in annoyance. "Why don't you just kill the dweeb stuff and tell me what you want, all right?" "You used to dig this stuff. What changed, Ange? What made our special thing just dweeb stuff?" "I grew up, Eric. You haven't. That's why it's over for us." "Ange," I sighed. "I go by Angela now. And I heard you lost your job this week. You're not going to college and fired from 3 different jobs in a year, Eric? 2 of them were part-time." What could I have said? I didn't fit in. Angela did. She rolled her eyes, exhaled. "You gonna tell me or what?" "My comic books," I began, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Will you keep an eye on them for me? Ma knows you may pick them up." "Why, where are you going?" "To visit my uncle," I lied. Angela seemed to be in deep thought for a few seconds before answering. "Yeah, Eric, I'll keep them for you." "Thanks, Angela," I stuttered, and headed back for the fence. Back then, there were no mental health days, especially for us guys. You had to keep it all pushed down, deep inside. I was over the fence before it could leak out. As I drove through West Nashville to Dutchman's Curve, the forecast reported temps in the mid-80s. I could feel it. As I drove along, Mr. Fortune went on about Barbara Mandrell's new plaque, a boulevard in her namesake near Highway 31 East. This was fresh off her presenting the first Living Legend Award to Roy Acuff almost a week prior. Busy girl, Barbara was. It was then that Fortune said something about the eclipse. Totality was happening, but was not remotely visible here, or anywhere in the country, really. I drove on, not realizing that, much like the Apostle Paul, I was fast traveling my own road to Damascus, about to collide with the finger of God. I chose Dutchman's Curve for two reasons. One, it was a deserted area, although the tragedy that took place there should have made it otherwise. Two, the area itself, the spot where the deadliest train crash in American history happened. Two commercial trains collided with each other on the tracks in 1918, nearly 65 years ago back then. It's been said since then that the impact could be heard from downtown Nashville. 101 dead, most of them black folks. Kindred spirits, I fancied them. Felt cheated by the society of which I was born to. Disqualified before the race, no pun intended, even started. Of course, in my later years, I came to know how out of touch I was, ignorant of my white privilege. But I was a kid then, young, dumb, and numb, when it came to suffering outside my own orbit. I drove onto the barren area, parking along the old railroad tracks. It was truly deserted, a graveyard of grass, gravel, and dirt. Before I got out, I opened the glove box, grabbing a pen and small notepad. I jotted down some quick notes for any unlucky guy or gal who might discover my body before the police did. Wanted to make sure the car was returned to my ma. At least she could sell it and get a decent amount of money. I put the pen and notepad back in the glove box. I then went to the trunk of the car, opened it, pulled out the lockbox. I closed the trunk and took the box to the hood of the car, jammed the key in, opened it. I pulled the .38 Special revolver, a Cobra Colt, from its velvet home. It was a 1974 model, a gift from my grandfather to my mom. Mama was born and raised in Massachusetts. Grandpa had become obsessed about safety with the rise of the Boston Strangler in the early 60s. They eventually caught the scumbag, or not, depends on who you ask. But Grandpa never shook the paranoia. Mama despised guns until we had a break-in scare late in '73. I must have been 8. I barely remembered it, but it had been enough to convince a single mother she needed protection. We never had another break-in, so I doubted she missed the gun. I had found it a few months ago and decided the man of the house needed to keep it, without her knowledge, of course. I removed the Remington shells from the box and loaded the revolver. 6 bullets. Would only need 1. I closed the lockbox and dropped my keys, leaving both on the hood of the Cadillac. I walked along the deserted tracks, putting some distance between myself and the car. I must have walked no more than 30 feet before I decided it was time. This was the hard part, the part nobody really understands unless they've felt it firsthand. You've never felt truly hopeless until the day you convince yourself that your existence was a mistake. that God made a mistake. For me, it was the 11th of June, 1983. The hurt of feeling alone on this planet is a special kind of hurt, a hurt that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I knelt on those old railroad tracks, knees touching metal, grass, gravel, and dirt. I looked at the revolver one last time before putting the barrel to my right temple. It was then that fear began. Fear of death and fear of life. Fear of leaving Ma behind. Fear of the future. The most scary of all. Fear of the unknown. Angie, beautiful ex-girlfriend of mine, in my mind again with her Catholicism. Self-murder is still murder, Eric. God has a plan for everyone. Who are we to judge? We are put here to live, honey. Stubborn, I blocked out her words, choosing instead to replace them with the lyrics of the late John Lennon. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Cocked the hammer back, heard it lock in place. I wish I could say I had felt the graveness of what I was about to do. Truth is, I didn't. Only numbness. I closed my eyes, whispered a last, "I love you," to Mama, and took a deep breath. Pulled the trigger. Click! No bang. No heaven. No hell. No darn only sky. Just the finger of God. I lowered the pistol and looked it over. Jammed. Just my luck. Popped the steel cylinder out. 6 bullets, still intact. I spun the cylinder, smacked it back in place. Pointed the barrel at a pile of rocks a few feet away. Pulled the trigger. The revolver kicked, splintering rocks with the sound of a big exploding bottle rocket. I fell onto my back, the shot catching me off guard. I held the gun up, hand shaking. It made no sense to me that the gun jammed when it did. I got on my feet, tried to gather my nerve. I knew if I didn't go through with it in the next 10 seconds, I never would. I put the barrel to my head a second time, and that's when I heard it. "Stop," it said. I turned a 360, not believing what I heard. Voice both human and not. Both a whisper in my ear and an echo far off spoke to me. The very sound of it caused the hairs on the back of my neck to stand on end, and as mental as I was, I knew the voice was real. "Come." A rumble, invisible, hypnotizing, led me along the tracks. It was like a spell. I walked, gun in hand, following the rumble voice. About a quarter mile from where I started, the rumble grew to a screech. My eyes focused. Ahead of me were a group of 3 hoodlums, boys. They were all laughing and going on about something. I couldn't tell what. As I got closer, I saw what they were up in arms about. They were standing around a smoking crater in the ground, no more the size of a very large pothole. Inside that crater was a girl. She looked to be my age, only the scale was off. She was no bigger than a Cabbage Patch Kid, you know? Smaller than a toddler, but with scrawny arms and legs, lying in a heap. Had a tangled mess of blonde hair, red-black patches in it here and there, like dried blood. Her tiny body was covered in a halter and pleated skirt, her legs fishnet stockings. Her arms were decked in leather, all the way down to gloved hands. The hoods didn't even see me come up, were too busy having fun. Their leader, a fat kid with gapped teeth, flicked a cigarette butt at the girl creature. It bounced off her little head, burned her. Her mouth opened in pain, but no sound came out. The fat hood laughed. Check that out, fellas. Did it really feel that? Barbie doll from hell feels the burn. The other two hoods, both taller and much thinner than their leader, began kicking dirt and gravel into the pothole, onto the girl creature. She covered her head, her little mouth open in silent agony. Stickman 1 spoke up. It kinda looks female, Fatso. Think it has any girly parts? Why don't you grow a pair and pick it up, Ned? Find out. Stickman 2 laughed. Only one way to find out, Ned, Fatso chimed in. Let's take a peek under the hood. Ned, a.k.a. Stickman 2, squatted and reached for the girl creature. His finger touched the top of her head. She sunk her teeth into his finger at once, taking a chunk of flesh and fingernail. Ah! Ned screamed, jerked his finger away. That grody little wastoid bit me. I'm bleeding. Fatso pushed Ned aside and brought out the knife, a 9-inch stiletto. Get out of the way, airhead. She won't play? I'll cut the skirt off her then. My eyes went to the revolver in my hand. The rumble voice returned, spoke again. Stop them. Words like electricity went down my arm to the gun. I raised it, aimed it at Fatso. The rumble voice spoke again, screeched. Rebuke them! Hey, Fatso! I said. Fatso turned to look at me. I pulled the trigger. Bottle rocket. Everyone froze. I was sure I had totally missed. And then the blood came. It oozed down the left side of his jaw, neck. Fatso reached up to touch his ear. The lobe was gone. The look he gave me, I ain't ever forgotten it. He didn't scream, and neither did his cronies. The threesome booked it down the tracks before I even figured out what had happened. And then the rumble voice was back, giving orders again. Fire! It said. I let off another rocket. Fire! Pulled the trigger. Another rocket. 4th of July in June. And then the rumble voice gave me back control. The hoods were long gone. Only I and the girl creature remained. And the voice. As I drew close, she looked up at me from her crater in the ground, her maroon eyes large. Pretty. She waved. She is grateful, the rumble voice said. Although the voice was still full of the same power, it was softer now, less commanding. I lowered the revolver, hand shaking. I looked around. The voice was inside my head, yet it sounded as it was coming from every direction, both inside and outside my head, everywhere at once. I asked the obvious question, at least I thought it was, Are you God? There was a pause before the rumble voice answered, I am not. Then you're the devil? I asked. What do you believe, Eric? I mumbled out loud, talking to myself. My head was crowded. I don't believe you're the devil. If you were, it would have made more sense for you to let me kill myself, and then let Fat Boy and company kill her, I reasoned, pointing to the girl. Sounds like you're smarter than your former deeds would suggest, the voice said. But you're wrong about me stopping you from ending your mortal life. At least partially. That was her idea. I looked at the girl. She looked back. Who are you, then? I asked the rumble voice. I am JYLL, an instrument and weapon of the Most High, sent to help the girl before you complete her mission. And she is? I felt the air around me ripple with impatience. Weak, hungry, and with very little time to complete her mission, much less explain it all to you. The girl waved again before collapsing onto her face. She is dying, Eric Steele. The journey from her world to yours has greatly depleted her body. Nourishment is paramount. This is unreal, I said, backing away. Really was. All the beliefs I had about God, aliens, destiny were all being tested, all at once. I had begun the day with one goal. Now I was in way over my head. JYLL grew angry. I have never interfered when free will is at play in humans. That is not my function. You had every right to destroy yourself. But she pleaded for me to intervene. Make no mistake. You are alive because of her. And so are the 3 deviants I ran off using your body. I bowed to the screech of JYLL. It put me on my knees. And now, one who spared your life needs your help to do God's work. Will you answer the call, Eric Steele? Will you, like so many among you, wallow in the muck of destructive nihilism? I fell on all fours, about to pass out from the weight of the angel's voice. Will a Big Mac and fries do it? I squeaked. The tiny girl stretched her arms out at me. JYLL said nothing. He didn't have to. She wanted to be picked up. I hesitated, remembering the pound of flesh she took out of poor Ned's dirty little finger. I tucked the revolver in the back of my waistband and pulled my shirt down over it. I squatted and scooped her into my arms. She didn't bite me, much to my relief. I cradled her gingerly, doing my best impression of a mother holding her newborn for the first time. I felt her fragility as I stood up. Good, JYLL said. Now, take us to your transportation. Us? I questioned. Someday soon, Eric Steele, you will learn that the most important things are rarely seen by the human eye. Just because you cannot see my body does not mean I am without one. Guess, was all I thought to say. I carried the girl quietly back to the Cadillac. I looked straight on, but could feel her eyes on me. And I could also feel the presence of JYLL, like a lit fuse ready to blow any second. When we came to the car, the lockbox and keys were still lying on the hood, right where I'd left them. That's when the shame came. So much was going on in the world that I was unaware of. So much I had missed, almost missed it all. That moment was the first time I had ever entertained that maybe I didn't know as much as I thought I did. I sat the tiny girl down in the passenger seat, tossing the lockbox into the back seat. I got behind the wheel and started the car. To nourishment, JYLL reminded. I gave a nervous laugh. Doubt McDonald's qualifies, but let's hope it hits the spot. We drove to the McDonald's off Charlotte Avenue, the one Mama and I would eat at when I was younger. It was right across the street from Richland Park Library. She would let me pick out a couple of books to read every week, and afterwards we'd hit the place up for some burgers and shakes. I pulled into the lot, parked, looked at the girl. Her eyelids were heavy, her skin yellow. JYLL spoke. Hurry, he said. I turned to the girl. I'll be back in a jiffy. Her face wary, she nodded. Inside, the place wasn't as packed as I thought it would be. There were a couple of families, a father and daughter eating together, and another larger family, parents trying to eat against the will of twin infant boys. No one was in line, so I walked up to the counter. Lo and behold, ambitious Freddie Noble greeted me. "Welcome to McDonald's. What can I get for you?" he asked. "Hey, Freddie." "Hey, you're Angela's boyfriend, right?" "Yeah," I lied. "Yeah, the Scopassis are good. They're paying me for lawn care this summer." "Good for you, buddy," I said. "What'll you have?" I looked at the menu board. Give me a Big Mac and some... You tried the Chicken McNuggets yet? Dude, they're so good." I thought about the girl, her frail body, her tiny mouth. "How many can I get for $2? "You can get a 6-piece and some fries." "Give me that. A small Coke and a small ice water, I added. $2.25, Freddie said. I forked it over. It was a 3-minute wait, so I used the restroom to pass the time. After Freddie handed me the goods and off to the car I went. Beggars can't be choosers, but I still hoped the girl would like the food. When I came out of the restaurant, a Metro police car had my Cadillac hemmed in, a burly officer in sunglasses standing near the trunk. My blood turned ice. "Is this your vehicle, young man?" the officer asked. "Yes, sir," I said, praying I didn't let on I was crapping bricks. I froze in front of him, sure he spotted the girl. But when I peered into the window, she was nowhere to be seen. This bothered me even more than if she'd been spotted somehow. I put on my best fake smile. "Is there a problem, officer?" "There was an incident before noon of possible gunfire at Dutchman's Curve. A car fitting this description was reported to have been seen in the area." I shook my head, sitting the bag of food and drinks down on the trunk. "I just visited my girlfriend a while ago, sir," I half lied again. "Lives on Leslie Avenue. She wasn't feeling well today, so I stopped here for some lunch. Was gonna hit the record store after." He looked me over. "Mind if I take a look in your car then?" I stalled, peeking through the window. The lockbox, just like the girl, was gone. "No problem," I finished. The officer turned and peered into the car. There was nothing out of the ordinary that I could see, and neither did he, apparently. After a few seconds, he turned his attention back to me. Revolver tucked in my jeans suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, like it was burning a hole in my back. "Everything looks good," he said. "But stay out of trouble, kid. I know school's out for summer and all that jazz, but find something constructive to do." "Absolutely, sir," I agreed. I watched him get back in his patrol car, didn't move until he pulled off. I grabbed the goods off the trunk and got in. Sure enough, as soon as my butt hit the seat, the girl was back in shotgun, as if she had never left. I looked over my shoulder, unsurprised to see the lockbox had returned to the back seat, too. The girl looked at me with exhausted eyes. "How'd you do that?" I asked her.
"How did I do that?"
JYLL interrupted.
"It doesn't concern you, Eric Steele. You have nourishment."
I rummaged through the bag, brought out the McNuggets and French fries. "I'm a bit strapped for cash, couldn't buy much, but the kid said these are pretty good. The girl has a small mouth, so these might be easier to eat." I opened the box of nuggets and offered her one. My stomach growled as the aroma hit my nose. I had not even thought about getting something for myself. The girl grabbed the nugget with her tiny hands and bit into it. She chewed fast, the look on her face telling me the rest. "She likes it," I laughed. As soon as she finished the nugget, I reached into the box and handed her another. Pretty soon she had eaten all 6 pieces. She went through the French fries even faster. Finally, she downed both the ice water and Coke in under a minute flat. She belched, and I could see the difference the meal had made. Her pallor was healthier, her posture better. "What's her name?" I asked JYLL, my eyes on her face.
"Her name is JYLL."
Capital letters skipped across my brain, but I never heard the name. The letters simply flashed in my mind. I reasoned out loud again. JYLL? JYLL said nothing. "Is her name Jill?"
"Yes, that's how it translates in your language."
"Not with an I?" I asked.
"Sometimes I."
"Okay," I said under my breath.
"Jill is thankful for the nourishment you gave her."
She made praying hands. You're welcome," I said.
"But she is concerned that you are not committed to helping us complete her mission."
"Why is that?" I asked warily, knowing the answer.
You tried to destroy yourself. She knows this means that you do not have a true respect for your purpose, that you do not understand that your life is a gift.
I suddenly felt like the two of them, both angel and girl, were judging me. This isn't about me, I snapped. Nothing ever is, and that's the point. This is about her mission from God or whatever. Why does it matter what I believe? Jill bowed her head.
Jill believes if you knew about the world we came from, you would understand what's at stake. You would understand what you nearly lost.
Jill stared at me, her large eyes searching mine.
No, we have no time for this.
JYLL screeched. The rumble voice was at full force again. The pressure was giving me a migraine. What is it? I cried. The father and daughter duo from the restaurant gawked at me as they headed to their station wagon.
Jill wants to show you a shadow of where we come from,
the angel said, his tone in a much lower pitch.
Our time is short, and I'm against it. She is convinced you need this. Are you prepared to see through the veil, Eric Steele?
Jill's eyes met mine, her expression pleading. I was scared, but couldn't resist. Okay, I said.
Then prepare yourself,
JYLL warned. Jill stretched her arms out, wanted to be picked up. I took her small body into my arms, a body that I then realized had grown larger than when I had first held her. She touched my cheek, her eyes roaming about my face for what seemed like forever. And then she placed her tiny forehead against my own, brushing one of my auburn strands of hair aside. She inhaled. So did I. And then I was gone, a passenger on a train ride to hell, way in over my head. Alice in Wonderland, LSD edition. Jill's voice was in my head, or my mind was in hers. I could not tell. Too hard to describe. I was no longer me, and she was no longer she. We were one. And what one experienced, so did the other. Her voice, beautiful and melancholy, like a violin string on the verge of snapping, guided me through the visions.
Hello, Eric. I am Jill. I come from a world, a dimension, much like yours. But there is one key difference.
Visions flashed before me, became part of me. Famine, pestilence, and war danced across the globe before my eyes. But death wasn't there. Suffering was absolute, never-ending.
In my world, there is no God. Here, he gave humanity what it most desired, what it most deserved. He left us alone.
More visions came. God returned to heaven, the earth left to the whims of sadistic men and perverted celestials, humans eating from the tree of knowledge and then the tree of life, becoming the walking dead. Life without goodness, without consequences.
We inherited eternal life, but at a cost. Without the light, darkness becomes ruler of all it touched. We evolved, but we did so without any of the traits of the Creator. Mankind, in our ignorance, believed that goodness came from within. In truth, we had only reflected our origins. We were never the source.
Still more visions, personal ones. Life of Jill.
No God, no Savior, no hope. Can you imagine, Eric? It's easy if you try.
Flashes of Jill, pulled from her mother's womb. Violated at 4 years old. Trafficked at... Stop! I said.
I'm sorry, Eric. I can't stop. I need you to see.
No, 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 I begged her. I don't want to see this. Please, don't make me. And more flashes still. Jill, a slave of defilement, used, abused, and tortured. No death, no escape. Rinse, cycle, repeat. Eternal life keeping her stitched together like an old Raggedy Ann doll. Her very name, an acronym. JYLL. Just young, lovely lips. I screamed, she screamed, we all screamed, and screamed and screamed, screamed until that beautiful, melancholy violin string snapped, forever silenced by a world of depravity. I opened my eyes to a sunset sky staring back at me from the windshield. Hours had passed. Touched my face. Wet. Took a look at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bleeding? I turned. Jill was slumped in shotgun next to me, and much larger. She was now the size an adult human being should be, same size as Angie and me. Streaks of blood also ran from her eyes, stained her cheeks. My eyes didn't hurt. I could see just fine, but the blood made me uneasy. I tried to wipe it away with the tail of my shirt. Stigmata. Extraterrestrial style.
We are out of time, Eric Steele. We must go.
AZL in my head again. I cranked up the Cadillac, looking to see if Jill would stir. No dice. Where are we going? I asked the angel.
Follow the orb of light. It will take us to the proper destination.
The orb appeared near the stoplight just outside the parking lot. I threw the car in reverse, then wheeled onto 47 Avenue North Street. I'm in now, okay? But what are we up against?
An ancient creature, a negademon. In your world it goes by many names. Yama, Santa Muerte, Ojiki, a Shinigami.
Like the Angel of Death or the Grim Reaper? I said. You can't kill death itself.
No one said anything about trying to kill death.
AZL groaned.
Like us, this creature is not from your world, but an entirely different dimension. It escaped, and its powers are on the eve of blossoming. If it is not removed, it will destroy your world. Jill, along with myself, was chosen to correct this aberration.
I wheeled onto the 155 Briley Parkway Exchange, doing my darndest to keep up with the orb. And whether you like it or not, I'm chosen too, I added. So, if we can't kill it, we need to return it to its own world?
Your brains are not as minuscule as I had originally calculated, Eric Steele.
Hazel quipped. Well, thanks, I smirked. I put the pedal to the metal. The orb did its job, led us to the destination, the Grand Ole Opry. Night time. The lot was packed to the hilt with people, crowds made even larger by the overlap of Opryland theme park goers. Before my come-to-Jesus moment, I would have said luck was on our side. A beige sedan pulled out of the only parking spot available. I whipped right in, much to the lament of a waiting Oldsmobile. I looked over at Shotgun. Jill was still out cold. I shook her by the shoulders. No response. What's wrong with her, Haziel? Nothing. What's wrong? I repeated.
She is exhausted. The spiritual fusion between the two of you has weakened her mind and body. She will recover. There is no time to wait. You must go.
My blood turned ice again. I can't. I'm no demon slayer.
I will not lie to you, Eric Steele. If you confront the negademon, you will die. Of this, I am certain. But if you do not stop it from singing its death lullaby, all that you ever loved will be destroyed. Follow the orb. I will guide you.
When I left the car, I felt the air ripple. I saw nothing, but knew JYLL was with me. The orb of light appeared just ahead, folks passing through it as if it were a ghost. I glanced at Jill one last time, hoping her large maroon eyes would be staring back at me. No such luck. I waded through the crowds in a hurry. Gosh, there were so many. The air was filled with smells of cotton candy, popcorn, fried foods, and Marlboros. My stomach growled, reminding me that I had long ago put away those eggs and toast. I followed the orb all the way to the entrance doors of the Opry House. I watched as security guards herded people into lines, checking their tickets and ushering them through metal detectors. The revolver I had on me suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds again. "I don't have a ticket to get in," I whispered.
Check the pocket of the man next to you,
JYLL said back. I looked over to my right. Sure enough, a man wearing a 10-gallon hat was standing next to me, horseplaying with his wife. His concert ticket was jutting out of his jean pocket. I pretended to lose my footing and snagged it. No one seemed to notice.
"Get in line,"
JYLL said.
"What is your weapon made of?"
I don't know," I stuttered. "It's light, maybe aluminum, maybe a little steel." The orb of light floating inside the doors disappeared.
"When I tell you move through the detectors, once approved, do not stop until you have cleared the checkpoint. Do you understand?"
I nodded. When it came time for me to show my ticket, the guard took it, looked past me, and motioned for the guy behind me to step forward.
"Go,"
JYLL said. I walked through the metal detector. It sounded as I went past. Everyone looked at me. I froze. "You got keys?" the guard asked. Reached into my pocket, showed him my keys. He waved me forward.
"Go."
JYLL's screech put my butt in high gear, and I booked it through the security checkpoint. In the lobby, crowds were filing into the theater hall. Another guard was on standby, watching everyone.
"Creature is close, Eric Steele. Can you talk your way into the dressing room area?"
"I can try," I said. "I'm sorry, sir," I began, catching the guard's attention. "I'm a student of the Blair School of Music, Vanderbilt University. I'm interning with the coordinator to help with stage setup." He looked me over. "Do you have a badge?" he asked. "I do, but I kind of left it backstage." "Jitters?" He looked me over once more, but then waved me to the side door. "You kids need to always keep that badge on your person. I'll allow it this time." "Thank you, sir," I said, pushing through the door. I couldn't believe it. The orb was waiting for me. I followed it down the hall, random staffers streaking past, barking orders. Orb took a right at the end of the hallway, and we came to a dead end, a dressing room guarded by one of the burliest bodyguards I had ever seen. He looked like a black guy version of the actor from that movie that had come out in '82, Conan the Barbarian. If President Reagan had this guy guarding him, Hinckley would have been a wet spot on the pavement. "What do you need?" he boomed, arms folded. A bazooka came to mind. I went for my revolver, but JYLL stopped me.
"Touch his forehead."
"What?" I asked. "What do you need?" The bodyguard barked again.
"His forehead."
The angel repeated. I let go of the gun butt and strolled up to the bodyguard. Unimpressed with my resolve, he looked down on me in amusement. I reached out. "What do you think?" he started. Touched his forehead. He fell like a sack of potatoes. "You killed him!" I scolded JYLL.
"Wrong. Unconscious. Go now, Eric Steele."
I stepped over him. Looking at the plate on the door, it simply read, "Superstar." I opened the door, walked in. The room was not a large one. I saw the face of a raven-haired angel, her back to me, as we locked eyes through a mirror trimmed with fat glamour bulbs across the room. Her gorgeous blue eyes searched mine, and then she grinned. "You sneaking for an autograph, ain't you?" Nancy Jean McGee winked. "Don't be shy, darling. Come on in. I'll always have time and then some for my fans." I closed the door and lurched into the room, not believing my eyes, not believing where the orb of light had taken me, not believing the truth. Nancy Jean McGee, an angel of death? No way! She sat down in front of her mirrored dresser and began brushing her hair. If she had been Reagan and I Hinckley, she would have had a hole the size of a grapefruit in the back of her head that very second. She sure as heck wasn't the president, and I was not Hinckley, revolver notwithstanding. Nancy pointed to a steel folding chair leaning against the wall. "Take a load off, cowboy. Chat with me while I freshen up. It's almost time." I grabbed the chair from the wall, unfolded it, and sat down a few feet away from her. I rubbed my sweaty hands on my jeans. I like your songs," was all I could say. She smiled. "Thank you. What's your name, darling?" "Eric," I said. Nancy began putting on her lipstick, a cherry red. "We met before, Eric?" she asked, eyeing her own lips in the mirror. "One time. You stopped by the county fair about a year ago. You signed a slipcover for me." "Praying on heaven, right?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, her rose oil perfume seducing me. She waved me off playfully as she touched up her mascara. "Ha! Don't call me ma'am, darling. Reserve that for grannies and retired school teachers. Nancy or Nancy Jean is fine."
Jill is still too weak to interfere, Eric Steele.
AZL's rumble voice was back in my head again with bad news.
She overestimated the toil and spiritual fusion between you two would have on her body.
"What do you mean?" I whispered. Pardon?" Nancy asked.
"It means that time is up. Draw your weapon. Kill her."
I stood up, knocking the chair over. "This is a mistake. She ain't no demon. She's just a girl."
God makes no mistakes. Now do as I say. Kill her.
Rumble voice screeched. I winced. 1,000 voices screaming inside my head. Nancy stood. Even before she turned from the mirror, I watched her face go from happiness to confusion to sheer dread. "What's wrong with you?" she cried.
Kill her.
Hazel screeched. Words like electricity went down my arm to the gun. I raised it, aimed it at Nancy. Not my will. "Stop!" I screamed. "Please, don't!" Nancy screamed back.
Kill her now!
"I'm sorry," I said. Pulled the trigger. A bullet, shot from the average handgun, travels 2,700 feet per second. Jill was faster. The mirror shattered, but Nancy was already gone. And then a blur. Jill slapped the gun out of my hand, tossed me through the open door and into the hallway. I fell on my back, then staggered to my feet. Not my will. Nancy and the Conan bodyguard were nowhere in sight. Jill must have gotten them to safety. Standing in the doorway of Nancy's dressing room, Jill was at the ready, face determined. I charged her full speed, arms and legs flailing like the puppet I was. The angel was in the driver's seat. Jill started down the hallway at me, her legs moving faster than I thought possible. "I can't stop it! Can't stop him!" I yelled. Jill's answer to my wig out, butterfly kick to the face. I threw a haymaker. She dodged it, gifting a quartet of punches to my ribs. Huge applause broke out in the theater hall along with a rib break. She followed with a backhand chop to my chest that would have made the nature boy Ric Flair proud. Woo! But I caught her left hook. She broke free, went low, and suddenly I was airborne again. hurtling for the room she had just tossed me out of. I fell on my back again, winded. As I gasped for air, I could hear JYLL still fighting. I sat up just in time to see JYLL appear in his true form. His arms were like octopus tentacles stretching out from his sharp beak. Twin fangs, just as sharp as the beak itself, jutted out on each side. His large eye peered out from the center of his slimy, ochre-colored body. It was both ugly and beautiful, staring at me as JYLL wrestled against its body. The two banged against the hallway walls, destroying everything they touched. JYLL screeched.
"Stop it, JYLL. I am not your enemy."
"The hell you ain't!" I yelled, my will my own again.
"You are fooled. The nega demon is the girl. She is not aware of what she is. We must."
Mass applause. The announcer was welcoming the night's guest on stage. Even through the walls, I heard her name, Nancy Jean McKee. I got up, ribs throbbing. JYLL, still holding the angel against the wall, looked at me, confusion on her face, then fear. The revolver was on the dressing room floor, beneath Nancy's overturned chair and surrounded by broken glass. I picked it up. JYLL let go of JYLL. I climbed onto her back. We could hear the crowd growing restless. Then, another pop. Nancy was taking the stage.
"Go!"
JYLL bellowed. We booked it down the hallway to the door that would lead us back to the theater hall. I ran behind JYLL and JYLL, expecting security to stop us any minute. It never happened. I saw them all knocked out on the floor as we passed. JYLL had made short work of them on her way in, no doubt. As we got closer to the hall, I could hear Nancy talking to the crowd, giving a short anecdote that caused laughter.
"Hurry, Eric Steele."
We pushed through the side door and came to the locked doors of the theater hall. JYLL crawled off JYLL's back and onto her hands, his tentacles gripping her wrists. The sharp beak of his body protruded, a broadsword out of this world. With a single slash, the lock was broken. As I pulled the doors open, Nancy started a somber yet plunky guitar intro. I knew the song all too well. Praying for Heaven. We started down the aisle. The crowd seemed to be spellbound already. No one noticed us creeping toward the stage. We must have been no more than 20 feet away. Then Nancy opened her mouth. "All her life that girl's waited. May good man give her peace. Bad romance west of the river. Heartbreak come from the east." Nancy belted the lyrics from her gut, the microphone amplifying her melodic voice. The crowd swayed along with the rhythm as she strummed her guitar. Her fingers moved over the strings with no effort. "Handsome face so full of liquor, charmed beauty by way of the beast. But when it come time to dream bigger, broke a promise he swore he would keep." A nosebleed. A couple of people closest to the stage collapsed. Two more soon after. I looked back. Both JYLL and the angel JYLL were in agony, writhing in unison on the floor. My skull felt like it was cracking open. Nancy sang on, the reality that she was killing her beloved fans unnoticed. "Now she's praying for heaven, an end to all tears and the pain. Keep the sixes and give her a seven. Wash her sins away, bring all the rain." My eyes were bleeding again, along with my ears. The death lullaby rode atop her voice, poisoning the ones of all who heard it. I fell on all fours, pain unreal. The entire front row of people dead. I screamed out, "JYLL!" JYLL rolled in agony and silence, half of her body shedding the disguise. I saw her true form, her skin disfigured, marred by tortures known only to the undead bodies of the damned.
"Stop the nigger demon!"
JYLL was screeching again, the lullaby doing its thing. Golden blood ran from his eyes as his tentacles squirmed in shock. Gone was the rumble voice I had come to know him by. Gone its command and power. The voice was pleading, scared. I lifted the revolver, fighting the urge to pass out. Negative Nancy crooned, played on. No, she can't do it alone. Lonely nights, all be gone. Popped the steel cylinder out. One bullet, just my luck. Spun the cylinder, smacked it back in place. 6 rows out from the stage, all dead. The next row. If his love won't come back, then let God take her home. A girl in the 7th row, no younger than Nancy herself, had an aneurysm. Fell. I raised the gun, aimed it at the raven-haired angel. She sang louder, strummed harder. Then let God take her. Negative Nancy's eyes met mine. I saw death in them. Home! I finished. Pulled the trigger, bottle rocket. The bullet went into her head right above the left eye. Violin string snapped. She fell over. Everyone panicked. Half of the 7th row collapsed. I did too. Last thing I saw was JYLL rushing the stage, JYLL in hand. I blacked out knowing Nancy was no more, vanished back to whatever hell she'd come from. 34 years later, and I still feel sorry for her. For myself, too. I didn't become Hinckley, but in a way, something worse. I'd become Mark David Chapman, putting to death the hopes and dreams of someone that really didn't fit in this world, someone truly alone. I had believed that my life was hell. True hell was what Nancy and JYLL lived. Born into a world where free will costs your soul, where hope is lost forever. Life goes on despite itself. Never saw JYLL again, JYLL either. My assumption has been that they, like poor Nancy Jean McKee, went back to the world from which they came. But that's anyone's guess. All I know is my life, and a ton of others, was saved on that hot June day so many years ago. It's been anything but puppy dogs and rainbows since, but I try to be thankful for every bit, the good and the bad. It's like that old Bonnie Tyler song. That duet with Rory Dodd, Total Eclipse of the Heart. That girl from a hopeless world taught me to hope through the pain, feel God in the storm. I hope now, I feel now, and I will try my best until my last breath. A shalabal to my Silver Surfer. Oh, how I miss her. How I miss my silent JYLL.
Scythe-Head Serpent by Alexneverdies, read by Randy Mccarten. The Texas Continental is an iron monastery full of fools' wishes. At the cost of your back and meaningful relationship, any man can find himself on the high sea drinking oil straight from the earth. They spit close to death every time the drill runs. The men on the rig look out to the open Gulf of Mexico. The water is only shared by those brave enough to be out here. An Indian rig propertied by Cush Oil Company is planted way out on the east side. They were able to access foreign territory under an American investor, barely visible to the naked eye, a bump on the horizon, a shadow representing competition. They rush to drill as much of the area as possible before the other takes it all. 2 cities separated by the waves. Hick is a man thrown out to sea, a man that finds no home or pleasure amongst society, modern-day outcast. His story is similar to many other men occupying the Texas Continental, yet the barrier between what makes an acceptable human is simply class. Hick can read, drive, and think, but the only thing he seems respected for is work. He is too rough for church, too tough for a wife, and too gruff for a job with air conditioning. For years now, Hick has found himself on these different offshore oil rigs. If he can stay the extra time, he will. His feet only touch land to board for the next job. He even sleeps on the dock while he waits. "Depth reached!" the shift leader, Kareem, shouts. "Extend the damn pipe!" Hick grabs a fabric cover around the pipe. Water spews from the loosened drill, but the cover contains what it can. A new section of pipe is raised onto the platform as Preston, the rig hand, wraps a chain around the piece when connected. Fergus spins the motor. The chain whips its way up the pipe. The men tighten on the extension with the tongs, and drilling continues. Close call every time. A high-risk job that doesn't allow a single mistake. The shift ends after 12 hours, and it's shower time. After that, they meet in the kitchen for supper. This crew of 4 has been called Go Fish, out account of always playing cards while the food is cooking. Hick and Preston are the rig hands. Fergus operates the crane, and Kareem supervises. Outside of this situation, these men would have never known each other. Friends today, strangers tomorrow. 200 people around this rig, and no friendship is worth keeping. The other crews walk by the break room and shoot the guys a middle finger. Go Fish doesn't care. They keep playing. Everyone hates the guys who already put in their work for today. "For a guy named Preston, I'd expect you to come for money," Fergus says. "That's a preppy man name from back in my day." "I'm sure it was, old-timer, but I'm not from anything kind of money," Preston responds. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm doing out here. It seems like I got out of high school and started looking for jobs." "How unlucky," Kareem interjects. "Did you close your eyes and pick the first one your finger landed on?" "I'm just out here to escape my ex-wife's greedy family," Fergus adds. "Nobody'll take care of me, especially now that it trickles when I pee. But they'll sure take my money. What about you, Hick?" "Go Fish," Hick diverts. "Hick thinks he's a tough guy, huh?" Kareem says to Hick. "Of all the employees here, you're the only one who keeps everything a mystery. I talked to the recruiter about you, and they said this isn't your first rodeo." "No, it isn't." "What did you do to get sent out here? You're about as ugly as a sack of bricks, so we know you aren't married." The crew laughs, but Hick doesn't find the joke funny. He stays solid, like a brick of ice. The men lower their tone. This type of teasing is what boys do in school. Adults should have enough of it. But the jokes live on in the blue-collar life. Kareem tested his temperament and found it was best to leave him alone. Hick is all business. "Money, same as you," Hick says. "That's why I'm out here." "You gotta let me see that bank account sometimes," Kareem says with a laugh. The Go Fish crew finishes playing their game, food, and beer. It's a good time for those trying to forget why they're out here. Eventually, they go their separate ways and head to their bunks. Hick is always the last to leave. He sits alone for an hour and counts the days until a new crew rotates. He knows he's the constant, and they're the variable. Not long after, hollering above starts. The stomp and banging can be heard below. Something has the night shift workers in a hoop. After a minute, everyone asleep was most likely awake. The Go Fish crew group at the stairs to see what was happening. The glow can be seen when their eyes get above the ladder. Out on the edge of the sea, hellfire. The cush site is wholly set ablaze. This type of job can have many mishaps, and it's hard to say what could have happened. The rig is destroyed. All the Texas Continental workers shout their theories, hoping for the correct answer. Fires burn high to the sky, and the orange swims in the water. The pyre is massive. That speck of an oil rig is much easier to spot now. Preston runs to the lifeboats, but is immediately stopped by Hick. He's pulled him back on the dock by the neck of his shirt. The danger of going down there is far too great to risk lives. Rows of staff stand and watch, knowing only miles away a site full of men is burned alive. The entire rig crashes into the water. The blue-collar guys all have the same prayer. I'm sure there is plenty of oil in heaven. If you go out there, they will blame us for the fire, Hicks says to Preston. You're young and want to help, but that company is responsible for them, not us. That's not right, Preston whines. We don't let men die. We do it every day. You should take a break, Hick. Kareem throws a hand on Hick's shoulder. I think the sea salt is making you bitter. The flame dipped, and now the dark is so empty that nothing can be seen. That's the scariest aspect of being out in the deep. Which way is home? In the night, the rescue ship shows. Hick knew someone would come. He's learned to stay out of everyone's business and let the systems that be run their course. That's how you stay alive. 2 hours pass, and Preston is the first to spot a small lifeboat under the platform, easily mistaken for driftwood. A hand paddles for the dock. With all the chaos, seeing the stranger on the lifeboat was impossible. One of the cush workers was able to escape, but why would he come all the way here? The rescue is miles away. He stays huddled over, exhausted, heart pounding. What is that? Preston says. Do you all see that? Americans! The stranger shouts for entrance. Let's bring them on board. We'll figure out the logistics later, Preston says. Bad idea, Hick responds. No, we can help, Kareem says with rank. Get 'em up here. The wind shifts, the air chills, and the smoke from the cush rig rolls under the Texas Continental. It's foggy. The Go Fish crew makes their way below deck to help the man up. Preston extends his hand, expecting the stranger to reach out for him. A loud noise rumbles behind the layer of mist. Everyone's attention points to the unknown. The stranger pulls a gun from his cloak and aims it at the water. His boat tilts back and forth, but he stays straight into the darkness. Something is out there. Something big. Boom! The shotgun recoils as he fires out into the open sea. The spray explodes the surface of the water. The men of Texas Continental all plug their ears. Some men run back inside, and some laugh. But the Go Fish crew stays. The language barrier is too difficult outside of the small amount of English. No one here speaks Hindi. The stranger shakes. Preston keeps grabbing his arm to drag him aboard the dock. Kareem tries to take the gun to keep everyone safe, but the stranger is so panicked that he starts fighting with both men to keep his gun. Stop it, Kareem says. You can't come aboard with a gun. The stranger turns the shotgun on Kareem. Bang! The stranger stops. The gun is released into Kareem's hand. Kareem pats himself, making sure he's still alive. The stranger looks down to see a hole in his chest. Hick stands with a smoking pistol. He's always been quick like that. The stranger is dead. Kareem puts the man in the boat and pushes him back into the wayward water. Preston stands impaled with grief. The boy's eyes tear up. He's never seen anything like that before. You saved my life, Kareem says to Hick. You shouldn't have trusted this man. Let's pull him back in. No. They look up. All the Texas Continental men stare down at Hick, their faces stricken with shock, undecided if he did the right thing. Morally, they're convicted because floating the stranger into oblivion isn't right. He deserves a grave. Self-defense is one thing, but did he need to die? Would he have shot Kareem? I won't report anything, Kareem reassures. We can call it even, and I'll vouch that you stay on the rig. You can say whatever you want. I'm not going back. What do you mean by that? I'm not leaving. Why do you need a gun here? Fergus comments. We're thousands of miles away from any reason to need that. Am I a bad person for keeping it on me? No, but killing someone might make me think that. Hick finds himself unable to sleep tonight, a wretched sense of self. Sweat seeped into the weathered cracks on his forehead. Young men shouldn't be aging this fast, but they do out here. 5 a.m. is approaching, and not a wink, not a minute of rest. Hick can justify shooting the stranger, but that question brings everything else to the top. He begins to think about what he did on the mainland, the reason he's hiding out here. Hick gets up and finds the med bay to see if the nurse can prescribe any sleep medication. The nurse's name is Devlin, but everyone calls him Dev. He plays video games all night. The lack of Wi-Fi has turned him into a campaign player. Digital FPS clips unload as Hick's hulking presence almost jolts Dev straight out of his seat. "Hey, Hick," the nurse says, checking his own pulse. "You almost scared me half to death." "I'm having trouble sleeping." "I saw what happened out there. Well, I didn't get to see it, but I heard about it. Are you okay? I know that was super scary. Was he a crazy guy?" "I don't think he was crazy. I did at first, but now I think he was warning us about something." "Like what?" "I don't know. Every time I lie down, I see him pointing to the water. Well, both of them were there." "You ever seen anyone shot before?" "This isn't the first person I've shot and killed. They were both pointing out into the water." Dev gulps, the frog in his throat. "Let me hook you up with some sleep medication. The pharmacist will have to send it by mail. I'll make the call." Since the shift starts soon, Hick decides to sniff a salt, eat a giant breakfast, and tuck a few nicotine pouches into his upper lips. His past might be catching up to him, but tonight he believes he can get some sleep. The Go Fish crew put on all their gear. No one brings up that a man was shot aboard the rig last night. Everyone keeps to themselves and quietly discusses it between friends. Hick is avoided like the plague, but he guesses he always has been. The exiting crew sits in the kitchen, chatting up a storm. The exchange of middle fingers goes the other way now. This crew doesn't respond. They sit, confused, looking at the picture they took last night. Hick presumes it's of him shooting the man. He steps in, about to rip the phone out of their hands. He gets the idea that most people on the Texas Continental would do something to remove him. "What are you all looking at?" Hick commands. "There is something in the water. It's been circling us all morning," a night shift worker says. Hick and Preston look at the picture on the phone, but nothing. Whatever is in the water looks like waves, imagination from a busy night. Most of the men are restless, seeing things out of the corner of their eyes. "I don't see it." The Go Fish crew starts their work. Hick keeps checking the water below. He looks over the edge multiple times and wonders if the stranger's body is floating. The stranger could have swayed back to us in the middle of the night. He begins to tell a story to himself that everyone is trying to get him kicked off the rig. Suppose they could get a picture of the body. They'd send him home. Hick cracks about 3 more Red Bulls before the 10th hour of work. He's lagging, continually seeing things in the ocean. "It's there, I know it," Hick says. "My heart is pounding out of my chest." "What are you looking for?" Preston responds. "I don't know." "Hick, quit getting so close to the drill," Kareem interrupts. "That's the 3rd damn time." "Is there something in the water?" Preston says. Hick's drooped eyes sink lower, and the rate of his vision slows. Exhaustion. It's one thing to be running on empty. Hick has even pulled the 72-hour shift before. But the stranger's face is catching up with him. His friend's face, too. "Hick!" Kareem shouts a warning. Hick steps too close to the drill, and the chain on the pipe snatches him up. His leg crumbles like a tin can, shattering his knee, a mangled piece of meat. When the machine dragged him in, he rammed his head on the spinning pipe at Mach speed. Preston grabs on and keeps Hick from getting entirely devoured by the machine. "Stop!" Preston shouts. Fergus shuts off the drill. The operator slowly unwinds the chain. Hick is knocked out clean, and Preston gently holds his head up. The stretcher slides under his back. It took the Go Fish crew and Dev to lift him, but they removed his leg from the chain without more damage. He is lucky he only broke the bone in one place. but that can be attributed to Hick's size and brute strength. The injury is humanizing. "Stay with us," Kareem says. Hick wakes up in the med bay, with Kareem, Preston, and Fergus standing at the door. Preston approaches his bedside like a curious young man, not understanding that death happens constantly. He's even pushed the shooting last night to the back of his mind. It's a fraction of a chance that Hick even survived. Most men wouldn't recover so fast, but Hick tries to stand up. His right leg is unusable, and his head is in a bandage. Kareem is upset, disappointed, quietly furious. He stands tall at the foot of the bed, peering down at him. Any blue-collar guy can see this reprimanding coming. The other crews are working like crazy outside. The clanging can be heard through the halls. "I screwed up," Hick responds. "My head was fuzzy, but I'll be back tomorrow." "On one leg?" Fergus jokes. "I'm sending you home," Kareem says to Hick. "The helicopter arrives tonight." "What?" "You hear that sound out there? Other guys working? You know what that's called? It's called picking up our slack." "I'm not going home. I've been here longer than you three combined. You don't tell me what to do." "You saved my life, so I can't judge too much. But we can't carry a three-legged dog. They're coming for you. Don't worry, you'll get home and everything will be okay. Take a break." "I can't go home." "Save your nonsense for the helicopter." Kareem and Fergus leave the room. Hick is given more pain medicine while Preston watches. Maybe Hick can rest now. Who knows what to expect when he wakes up on the med flight out. Preston has one more thing to say before leaving. "I saw it in the water. Something was swimming when I was carrying you down. It was big." "Like a whale?" "No, massive. I don't know who will believe me, but this thing was bigger than a building." A few miles away, at the wreckage of the Cush oil rig, a ship graveyard rests in its place. The rescue teams and their boats are all split down the middle, sinking to the bottom. A pile of metal washed back and forth, and not a single man was alive. Bodies like buoys. Schools of fish nibble on the dead flesh. Only the universe could tell what happened out there. So many mysteries have always been hidden on the high sea. The Bermuda Triangle has claimed its share of crash landings. Most minds don't fathom how much ocean is out there and how much goes missing. The Texas Continental will face death out on the Gulf of Mexico. It's coming right for them. A death whose existence starts at the primordial brine. It was born at the bottom. Hick wakes up in the middle of the night. The pain meds are wearing off, and he's feeling it a bit. Minor adjustments throb with sting through his broken leg. His knee is swollen like a beehive. "That hurt," Hick says to himself. "Nurse, can I get some more medication? I'm starting to feel it a bit." The hall echoes. No answers back. That's the sound Hick hasn't heard in a decade. Silence. The lighting is off around the ship due to a power outage. Everything is quiet, empty. What could this even be? The rig has been through thunderstorms, but nothing so powerful that everyone would store away in an emergency room. Hick hops around on one leg and finds his balance. Every step sends a shock of agony into his knee. He catches his breath and opens the storage closet. A pair of crutches lean on the cabinet. That's what he was looking for. The plastic packaging is wadded and tossed to the floor. He tucks the crutches under his arms and hobbles through the rig, holding the flashlight tightly. Where is everybody? Hick thinks. Where would they be hiding? The rig never stops pumping, and when it does, something must be wrong. A storm did pick up. Hick explores the entire hull, looking for anyone below deck. The break room is empty. Usually guys come in and out all night, running around the place. Hick hobbles outside onto the walkway. The window that overviews the platform has its metal shutters closed out. There is a clue. The shuttered office is where they could be. It's a lockdown protocol. Something scared everyone off, but it's never been the weather. Hick click-clacks across the metal walkways as the salty rain pelts him. The heavy sea winds push him in every direction. He descends levels, looking over the railing on his way down. The floodlight illuminates the dark waters. Something is swimming around the platform between transitions, circling, slicing the waves. A slimy back is exposed, and then covered by the water again. Hick stands wide-eyed, not knowing what this thing is. Whale? Shark? Squid? A blinking light in the sky is flying toward the rig. It's obvious enough to take Hick's attention. The storm covers the thudding, but the closer the flash gets, he can see it's the Medflight helicopter. The weather must have delayed the schedule. Hick races to the top. The gust almost blows him off the side. He's a man of his word, and it would be nice if these guys could help him find the rest of the crew. But one thing for sure is that he isn't going home. Hick reaches the top of the helipad. Something unexpected happens. A colossal structure rises from the tidal current, almost like a skyscraper parting the waters. The thing points straight and then begins to curve its back. This monolith towers over the oil rig. The helicopter flies under the arch, not even realizing what the worm-like figure is. The structure bends. It uncurls from the pit of the sea, revealing a creature unknown but ancient in dominance over the trenches. The face is a blade sharper than the wind. When held at the right angle, a shaving screech can be heard. The monster contorts its blade body until it's shaped like a scythe over the helicopter's passage. Serpent, Hick says to himself. The Scythe-Head Serpent. The serpent chops the helicopter right out of the sky, like a hand swatting a mosquito. A fireball explodes away from the platform. The debris spins and crashes into the rig. Hick ducks to not lose his head and moves back down the ladder, taking cover under an awning. He watches the serpent sink back into the water. The pure bewilderment that no human could have known something like this existed. He'd heard stories before, but never in all of reality could this be. Keep it together. Despite the weather sending waves crashing back and forth, the hump of the serpent's back can be seen protruding above the water. The diameter of this monster must be 2 football fields broad. The color is dark, like an eel, but how its body can twist into shapes is incredible, intentionally curving like a scythe. The blade sliced through water with no issue. The edge has been sharpened, like it could split the Empire State Building. Hick balances himself and tries to keep track of the serpent. His limited mobility hinders his line of sight. The beast dives and escapes. Hick takes some solace, knowing that something that big couldn't see him perched on the scaffolding. Something as small as himself should be overlooked. The creature didn't even have eyes. How does it sense anything? A flare lights up the sky, blood-red light under the clouds. Hick traces the smoke where the flare came from and sees a high-rise in the distance and a man waving his arms. "Hick, we're over here," Preston says. "Quickly!" "Preston!" Hick runs on his crutches, pole-vaulting his stride as long as possible. The serpent stays under. The giant could explode from the sea at any moment and crush him to death. He wouldn't even know what happened. The serpent could annihilate the entire rig if it wanted to. Hick climbs the stairs, and Preston holds the door open for him. He gets out of the rain, and Preston leads him to the observation deck. The room is full of crew sitting and waiting. All heads are accounted for, as the leaders are gathering and trying to devise a plan. No one is ever happy to see Hick. The Go Fish crew sit at the table, and Hick sits next to them. Fergus even scoots away a bit. "What is happening out there?" Hick says. "Did you see that thing?" "Shh! We spotted it on radar miles off," Preston says. "They locked down the whole site, but we're trying not to spook everybody. Do you understand that at any moment that thing could kill us all? And what are we supposed to do?" Hick lightens up and catches his breath. Preston is right. The Scythe-Head Serpent is there. No one can kill it. So they might as well accept it, or never know about it. Hick stands back up. He has to get his frustration out somehow. "Why was I left in the med bay?" Hick says to the room. "Why did no one bring me to the shelter? Where's Dev?" Hick spots Dev. Dev tries to bury himself behind the welding team. He limps over to the cowardly nurse and grabs him by the collar. Dev holds his hands up, begging for mercy. Kareem stands close by to wrangle Hick if he gets out of control, but for now, he deserves to put in his 2 cents. "Why'd you leave me there?" Hick says to Dev. "The alarm sounded, and I panicked," Dev pleads. "I walked up to the deck when the guys started saying they saw something in the water, and then beep, 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 and I didn't have time to come get you." "You're supposed to stay with a patient." "Out here on the rig, I usually don't have overnight patients. It slipped my mind." "I should wring your neck." "Okay, enough. Don't waste your energy," Kareem says. "Crying about being left behind doesn't solve your problems." Hick releases Dev. "I saw it slap a helicopter out of the sky," Hick says to Kareem. "You can't get away from something like that. We're stuck here." "You saw it?" "Yeah. I've only heard stories, but never actually seen one. It's a sea serpent." "I guess we'll stick to the plan." "What's the plan?" "We wait here until daybreak and the storm is gone." That's what the men do. They wait. Hick props against a wall and notices that everyone moves to the other side. Preston is the only one who stays close enough, but that's his young nature. Even Hick understands he's not a desired human. He shot that man. "I should go to another room. No one wants me here," Hick says to Preston. "I'm surprised you're still hanging around me." "Yeah," Preston responds. "I'm just ready to go home." "We've been out here for a minute. What are you gonna do when you get home?" "Get married, get old, get soft." "You don't like this line of work? What do you want to be then?" "An artist. I mean, do you like doing this work?" "Artists don't get paid." "I know." "I can do the job, but I'm out here because I must be. I can't live with myself if I had to face what happened back home." "Can you tell me?" "Yeah. But when you return, you need to do me a favor." "What's that?" "Tell the family whose son I killed that I'm sorry. It was an accident. The gun went off in my hand, but I never pulled the trigger." "That's why you're out here?" "Yeah. Don't be like me. Go home and be an artist. Don't enslave yourself with work. It'll turn you to stone. You'll hold on to the fact that you're a tough guy, but there's no such thing as a tough guy. Look at me. All the men here sit away from me, afraid. Yet that machine snapped my leg like a stick. The Serpent could knock this whole thing over and turn us into fish food. So go be something before that Serpent catches you." "What if they don't believe me when I tell them it was an accident?" "They won't. I've been sending them every check I've made for a decade." The night goes on. The storm ends, and morning is here. The last 2 days seemed like bad nightmares. It's over. Everyone quietly stirs as the men wake up from sleep. A few guys poke their heads out and see the rainbow, a sign of peace. Almost like a tall tale of serpents was a story. The sun is bright and the sea is settled. No one exits the building, though. Everyone is too afraid to see if it's still there. "Does anyone want to know what's going on out there?" Kareem says. "I think we should all lay low until one of us can confirm." "I'll go," Hick says. "I'll help." Fergus stands up with Hick. "You don't have to go." "Shut up, kid." Hick and Fergus exit the room and inspect the platform. The walk is long, grated steel floors and stairways down, but the old man and the unwanted man make it to the drilling dock. Fergus helps Hick traverse the tricky steps. How can something so enormous be invisible until you can find the right point of view? The Scythe-Head serpent can be seen from the surface. The myth is wrapped around the rig's base in a slumber state. The fins create a glitter effect, making the serpent easier to spot. This entire place could collapse from one muscle spasm. "We won't be able to leave," Fergus says. "If it would let go, y'all could find a way out," Hick suggests. "I don't think that's gonna happen." The Texas Continental tremors like it's experiencing a massive earthquake. Metal bends and scratches against itself. The serpent starts to wake. Who knows how long before it rises again? Hick is knocked off his crutches. "Are you okay?" Fergus asks, helping him back up. "What the hell was that? We're doomed if we can't get off this rig. Tell them to get to the lifeboats. Come on, let's start hopping. No, give me your keys to the crane. I'm not going." "What?" "Give me the keys to the crane." "I hope you find some peace," Fergus says, handing over the keys. Fergus takes off and warns the men. They all agree and run to the lifeboats. No one sets the SOS signal yet, knowing the beast will destroy whatever approaches. They should be safe enough to call in the National Guard if they can get a few miles out. Someone will come to save them in a few days. "Stay quiet," Kareem goes from man to man, quickly instructing. "Get to the lifeboats. Leave no one behind." Hick sees this happen in real time and has to stop the serpent from annihilating the crew. He climbs to the top of the crane, one leg dangling all the way up. He's done most of the jobs before, but would have never thought of this. He's not certified, but he is confident he can operate the machine. He uses the hook to snag an oil tanker and lift it above the serpent's body. The blade will take the blast, but the body could be vulnerable. He's waiting for that right moment. The monster has no weakness. The best it can do is slow it down. The Scythe-Head serpent appears from the deep. The blade face is the first thing it raises as it curves its body. Hick drops the tanker on the monster. The explosion is gigantic, burning Hick in action. The way the serpent falls has damaged the rig's left side, but it uncurls. The remaining workers load up and wait to push off. The men lower into their boat and sail into the empty sea, paddling north. Kareem starts the SOS signal, getting the crew miles away. Preston keeps looking back at the oil rig. The further away they sail, the more the serpent wraps around the rig. The Leviathan is raised high above. The blade hangs, prepared for destruction. Physically, it has the exact appearance of a scythe. The Scythe-Head serpent obliterates the entire oil rig, taking Hick to the bottom of the ocean. He's swirled into a tornado of metal and water, the drowning and flushing nature of destruction. The liquid pours over him. The collapsed world drives down the river Styx. "Do you think it'll come for us?" Preston says to Kareem. "No more questions until we get home. Just know it's there."